Welcome to First Issues. Africa is rapidly becoming the newest destination for emerging markets investors. Since the year 2000, the World Economic Forum has identified more than half of the world's fastest growing economies as located in Africa. According to the World Economic Forum, by 2030, over 40% of Africans will belong to the middle or upper classes, and there will be a higher demand for goods and services. By that time, household consumption is expected to reach $2.5 trillion, more than double that of 2015 at $1.1 trillion. Even with these stats, experts still warn that the continent is a riskier prospect for investors than more developed regions, and so should be approached with caution and due diligence. This information supports the rankings found on the Rand Merchant Bank's Where to Invest in Africa report, which aims to clearly articulate the best places on the continent to set anchor for best returns on investment. First Issues sat with Rand Merchant Bank's Chief Economist and Head of Research, Isa Mhlanga, to unpack this report.
We're here today to talk about the Where to Invest in Africa, a report by RMB. So a question that maybe investors and budget allocators may be asking themselves when they're looking for opportunities is why Africa?
Why Africa? It's still the same response and potentially even more relevant now than a decade ago. If you look from a demographic dividend perspective, Africa is the most youthful population, just under 20 years. If you look at the median age, it tells you that there's massive potential if Africa were to harness the skills of its youthful population. The second reason, if you just think about the so-called new scramble for Africa that is taking place around the need to decarbonize the global economy, most of the minerals that contributes into that decarbonization are found in the African continent. And if you look in terms of agriculture, Africa has a significant portion of arable land that can still provide agricultural produce for the rest of the world. Just in terms of the sheer size of the African market from a population perspective, by 2050, Africa will have 2.5 billion people. All of those combined say, over the coming years, Africa becomes the next growth frontier after the Asians.
Let us now focus on Botswana, which is where we are actually going to be talking about the report here today. She has been ranked number 14 in the report. Perhaps at this point you could talk to the key matrix that led to that placement.
This year's methodology takes into account about 20 variables. So we move from 6 to 20. That can give you a sense of, there are more drivers of investments than what we previously could capture on the basis of data availability. Now, if you look at what the pillars that we take into account, there's economic potential. And then we have another pillar, which is connectedness and innovation, that tries to capture how innovative countries are. Then we have the human and social development. In there you have things like income inequality, you have unemployment rate, you have the Human Development Index collapsed into one measure. In there you would see that countries that are highly unequal, they rank very low. Countries that have low levels of human development also rank very low. In Botswana's case, on the social and human development, it underperforms. But also on the size of the economy, also, which is the economic potential pillar, it ranks very low because it has a small population, but also it's a small economy in terms of the size of GDP. So that drags it down. So if you then combine, given the weights, it ends up with Botswana at number 14.
You've just brought up a very important point, which is that we must not just focus on the rankings to determine where to invest, right? Which brings me to my next question. Botswana ranked 14th on this report, right? Which is a notch higher than Rwanda, who are known to be Africa's Singapore, considering the rate at which they're developing, the level of innovation and incorporating said aspects into their economy. So one might see this Botswana ranking higher than Rwanda as an oddity of sorts. So maybe clarify that.
If you look at these two economies, relatively they're smaller economies, which means you can try to compare their dynamics. And yes, Rwanda is considered the Singapore of Africa. It's because of the ability to innovate, which means it ranks very high on that score relative to Botswana. And then if you look in terms of the size of the economy, Rwanda also ranks higher because there's a larger population, almost 4 times bigger than Botswana. So you would expect Rwanda to show up much higher. But then you have to look at how we construct the index. It's not just the size of the economy. The economic potential itself is about 35%. But you have other measures where Botswana ranks quite high. Economic stability, you have very low levels of corruption. Those factors, they do contribute into lifting Botswana. And in fact, it's ranked very high as far as that economic stability is concerned relative to Rwanda.
Ultimately, Isaiah, what do you hope to be the key takeaway from this report by whomever it is that would be having a look at it?
The key takeaways that we really try to convey is, one, Africa is quite diverse. There are risks and opportunities. The historical approach of just looking at Africa as the dark continent, a hopeless continent, it actually misses the point. But also, Africa is not a country. It's a collection of 54 countries which have investment opportunities but also risks. It's not correct to just look at Africa as just one homogeneous investment destination. Look at different opportunities that drives your underlying business.